Yeah, we're good to go, Chair, whenever you're ready.
Sorry, welcome everybody to the meeting. As per usual, this one's a virtual meeting, so if everyone can bear with us if we have any problems, and we'll try and rectify them as quickly as possible. Onto the agenda, so I can find it. Any apologies?
Chair, apologies from Councillor Howes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Jelly is substitute.
Excellent. Any declarations of interest? No. Oh.
Chair.
Nope. Can we use the little hands? That makes life a little bit easier. Thank you. Councillor Titcombe.
Right, thank you. Yes, declare an interest in 5.2. The immediate neighbour is a friend of mine. Has been for 20 plus years. Thank you.
Councillor Jelly.
Chair, item 5.2. I'm a member of the Rothwell Town Council.
Councillor Morton.
5.3 and 5.4. I'm a ward councillor for those properties.
Any more for any more?
Not seeing any more hands. Okay. Minutes of the meeting held on the 1st of December 2020. Is everyone happy they're a true record and for me to sign them off?
Yeah, Chair, I think Councillor Adams was trying to get your attention.
Oh, sorry. Councillor Adams?
Yeah, sorry, Chair. Declaring interest non-prejudicial in 5.2. I work for adult social care for NCC.
Right, okay. So, minutes of the 1st of December 2020. Everyone happy they're a true record? Seeing lots of nods. Okay. I've got no items of urgent business, so we'll go on to the reports. I believe we've got speakers for 5.2 and 5.3.
That is correct, Chair. How do you want to play it tonight? Do you want me to bring them in before the officer report as we did last time?
Yeah, let's do it that way. So if we do 5.2, 5.3, then go back to 5.1, 5.4. Is everyone happy with that? Okay, so if we go on to 5.2 then, which is KET 2020-0715, Shotwell Mill Lane, Rothwell.
Okay, I'm just going to bring in Councillor Sedwin Brown, who's speaking as the ward councillor, and Rothwell Town Councillor Carl Sumpter. I'll explain to them where we're up to. One second, Councillor Sumpter. Okay, welcome to you both. We haven't quite had the first report yet, so that's why we brought you in, so that you get to see what the officers and the members get to see in terms of the report. Then once the report is done, Councillor Sumpter, you'll be speaking on behalf of Rothwell Town Council. You get 3 minutes. Councillor Brown, you are unlimited on your time as you're speaking as ward councillor. So I'm ready whenever the officer is, Chair.
Okay. I've forgotten who's doing this one.
It's me.
Me.
It's
Okay.
Carol. Okay. So the application in front of you this evening, number 1 Shotwell Mill Lane, is for the change of use from a C3 dwelling house to a C2 residential institution. This is to create a 4-bedroomed care home for young adults with complex learning difficulties. And it includes the conversion of the garage to habitable accommodation. Now, there's no external alterations. The footprint of the building isn't going to change externally. There is already 4 bedrooms to the property, and only the garage is going to be converted to make a bedroom 5. So if we go down to the next slide, that's showing you the external elevations as existing and the layout internally as existing. And then if we go down to the next slide, you can see no external alterations, and you can see at the bottom of your screen there is a car parking layout on this site plan which shows 8 parking spaces, and the internal ground floor layout next to that you can see where there is another bedroom with an ensuite to be created. So let me just get onto my report. Bear with me 1 second. The update from the applicant that you would have got this morning, she's just giving a little bit more information as to the staff handovers and the residents. So there will be no more than 8 or 9 staff on the premises at any one time. Each resident has a one-to-one carer, so they have a carer all day long with them. Then there is a manager, deputy manager, and a shift leader. So they're not all going to be at the property at any one time, but they may be during the day. The staff, the caring staff, work what they call a long day rota. So they start at 7:15 a.m. and they finish at 9:30 p.m. And this is when the handover will take place. So there is 2 pinch points at the start and the end of each shift where there will be a changeover of staff. That will all be done inside. There obviously will be a bit of movement around with the cars and the vehicles at that time. But again, that will be at 7:15 in the morning, 9:30 at night. So nothing in the middle of the night. And the manager will work an 8-hour day. So that will probably be 9 till 5 or 8 till 4. Other comings and goings will just be people who support the residents. And of course, if they go out anytime during the day, they do have a minibus, the residents themselves. So the 6 of the car parking spaces will be for staff. The 2 car parking spaces that you can see on the side of the dwelling adjacent to the driveway to the south will be for the minibus parking. I'd just like to point out on this slide before we get onto the photos, number 101, there is a driveway. You can see there is a driveway between their property and the application property. That is a driveway leading up to a house that you can just see at the bottom of the screen. It's 103 Rushton Road. And that is backland development in a plot at the back of number 99 and number 101. You can see that driveway more clearly on the photo. The first photo shows the application property with the driveway. And then if we go on to the second photo, you can see clearly there the relationship between the application property and the adjacent neighbour, with that driveway leading directly in between, and that leads up to number 103, which is screened on the left-hand side of the driveway by, I think it's a fence, and on the right-hand side it's a tall brick wall, and that can be seen better if we go back to the first photo. You can just see that behind the telegraph pole where the white van is. So I think that's probably described everything there for you. So with regard to the proposed development, it's a residential use in a residential area. The change of use from a single dwelling house to a care home is under the use classes order still a residential use. As I said, there's 4 young adults who will be living there. The small box room on the first floor will be used for overnight sleeping carer, and the conversion of the garage will be a good sized bedroom for one of the residents. There is the service user is a company called Alderwood, who provide residential care, education and therapy for people with complex needs. However, the use of the land, the use of the property, the change of use of the land continues with the land and not the service provider as such. So we haven't really made a lot of comment on actual Alderwood as a company, because at the end of the day, you are looking at the change of use of the house and not who is actually going to provide the care, or actually who's going to even be resident there. But the Alderwood have given me lots of information about the Quality Care Commission and what sort of mental health problems that these young adults have, and how different therapies are going to be carried out and what they do during the day and all that sort of stuff. There's been 3 letters of objection received from third parties. Basically, most of them are concerned with vehicular traffic to and from the site, but we've also got comments regarding noise disruption, countryside views that may be blocked, and concerns about the right of way, which is actually Shotwell Mill Lane is a designated footpath rather than a highway. And then there was a discrepancy on the form about the sewer and a septic tank. So the main concerns here is the principle of development, the design and impact upon the character of the area, the impact upon neighbouring residential amenity, the impact upon highway safety. And there is a section in the report on equality implications. And there's a part of the Equalities Act, section 149, which we take into account when we are looking at applications for vulnerable members of our society. So with the principle of development, as aforementioned, it's a residential use in a residential area. And in this regard, taking into account of all of the material considerations, the principle of the use is acceptable. It does provide us with a specialised housing need in Kettering, which is something that we are lacking, and there's no conflict with any of our policies. In regard with design, as I said, there's no external alterations, so for all intents and purposes, it's still going to remain looking exactly as it is. So in terms of design and impact on visual amenity, it complies with policy 8 of the Joint Core Strategy. With regard to impact on neighbouring residential amenity, again, there's no external alterations, so the footprint of the building isn't going to change. If we go back to the site plan, the first slide, you can see it's got a massive garden. I think it's around about 45 metres in length. I think it says that in the report somewhere, but I can't see it coming off the page at me. It's very heavily screened with mature hedging and trees, so there's no impact on overlooking or loss of privacy to the adjacent neighbours. And with regard to noise, because there's only 4 residents, it could be the same amount of residents in that property as a large family. It's a large family house anyway, so we do not consider that there'd be any overall change in potential noise and loss of amenity for neighbours in that sense. We have had a concern raised by a neighbour to say that her enjoyment of countryside views will be blocked because of the development. But as there is no external alteration, so the view is literally across the front driveway. The parking is away from that side driveway, and again, if we go back to the photographs, you can see that the garden, the front garden, is very large. It's very heavily lawned, and there's a few trees as well. So there's unlikely to be any impact in regard to loss of amenity. And again, I'm sure I don't need to remind you that a loss of a view over somebody's land isn't a planning consideration. And then we come on to impact upon highway safety. Northants Highways Authority have no objection to the scheme. They wanted to ensure that there was sufficient parking, and with 8 parking spaces, they've asked for 5 or 6, and there is more. So in terms of parking on site, that is acceptable. And the only thing that the Highways Authority asked was for some informatives to go on to the permission regarding the footpath or Shotwell Mill Lane, that there should be no obstructions on that when work's being carried out. There have been concerns again raised by local residents regarding the position of the actual driveway of the property onto a blind bend, but the driveway actually exists, and again, Highways have no objection to the use of the property for the proposed care home. So again, we consider that the application does comply with policy 8 of the joint core strategy. So in conclusion, the application property is substantial in a residential location. It's detached. We don't feel that there will be any loss of residential or visual amenity for the proposal. The proposal itself is sound, and we don't consider, we've considered the objections to the scheme, but we feel that the application is recommended for an approval. Thank you.
Councillor Edwards.
Are we not having the speakers first?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Well, but I got all excited. I saw the hand. Sorry, my apologies. Right, we'll start that again. How much of that did you miss, Chair? I know you were out of that for a bit and came back in.
I think you were talking last time I saw Carol was talking about it was the land that we were the application was for, if I remember rightly.
Oh, you missed quite a lot then.
Quite a lot then.
And reset it all.
Well, let's hope it doesn't go to a casting vote then.
Yeah, well, I have to abstain. Okay.
Do you want me to reiterate on anything?
No, well, you
Chair,
gave me the brief yesterday. So sorry, yes, James.
Yeah, sorry. Emma will be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but because it's all set out in the report and you've not missed any of the debate, I think that's fine. You could still cast your vote because you haven't missed anything in relation. Yes, there's clarification in terms of the report, but it's all set out there in front of you.
Okay. Should we go on to the speakers then?
Okay. Councillor Sumpter, 3 minutes when you're ready, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, right. Thank you, councillors, for taking the time tonight and inviting me to speak on behalf of Rothwell Town Council. Just a quick note, before the planning has been granted tonight, I know that a lot of the work's already been completed and the firm have already advertised for the jobs that are maybe going to be created within this development if planning is passed. So I thought that was a bit presumptuous for a start. Right, so we've got Shotwell Mill Lane itself. It's got limited rights of access for domestic dwellings, and for over 1,000 years it's had pedestrian access all the way to Pitwell, and it's known as Monk's Path. It's owned by a farmer who grants access to these existing domestic dwellings within his track, but I don't know whether the owner's been contacted in respect to allowing access for a business premises onto Shotwell Mill Lane, and who would be liable for repairs to the track from wear and tear. I know that there's only 4 residents supposedly going to be in there with 4 carers on 2 shifts, but have you allowed for parents visiting, relatives visiting, maintenance staff? I know that myself do maintenance on buildings electrically, and we're regularly visiting care homes. Social workers, healthcare workers, physios, your sewage, because obviously the sewage was slightly wrong on the application. It's not main sewage, it's a septic tank. So that truck would be in and out every now and then. And of course, deliveries of food and anything else that they need, toilet rolls, cleaning facilities, all this sort of stuff. So that's in addition to the few people that are going to be parking there regularly from work. It's all the extra stuff that's going to be in and out. I noticed on the car parking schematic you mentioned earlier, the 2 parking spaces at the left-hand side of the development, that track to the back of the house through into their garden is also on other people's deeds as a right of access to the back there. And I noticed that it's going to be parking for, as you said earlier on, for the minibuses, which would in fact block the view for the countryside that the neighbour has sort of complained about. It wouldn't do normally if there was cars parked there, but with a couple of minibuses parked on those 2 spaces, it wouldn't just block their right of access, it'd also block their view overlooking sort of Rushton and Valley beyond. How much more have I got? About another minute.
6 seconds.
6 seconds. Right, so that's the parking spaces. Oh, there's been 11 accidents in 7 years. I've got a report from the police on that bad bend on Rushton Road. On that spot, there's been 11 accidents in 7 years. And that's it. I think that's it. I think the traffic surveys, I noticed, been done by North Unitary. Is that a new department?
If you can wrap up, please, Carl.
Yeah, sure. I was just going to ask whether they actually visited and had a look, and whether they got a report, because it's heavily used at the minute with the roadworks for the Rothwell North development, and or whether they just took a cursory glance at a map. That's me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Brown, over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair, councillors. Thank you. You've already received letters from nearby residents with their concerns and objections, which I hope you've had time to read, and I'm here to support their objections this evening, with particular reference to the vehicle movements and the access road, Shotwell Mill Lane. It's a very narrow private lane, known actually locally as the Folly, and it's extremely popular with walkers of all ages and abilities, dog walkers, families with pushchairs and toddlers in tow, little ones learning to ride their bikes for the first time, people on mobility scooters and so on. From the edge of our town, it takes us into the open countryside and down towards Desborough, enjoying unspoilt countryside as we go. We're all being encouraged at the moment to take a walk outside for an hour a day to help with our mental health and well-being, not only because of a lockdown, but also to help develop a lifelong habit of fresh air and free exercise. There's also a large allotment adjacent to the number 2 property, which is Millway, and that's very well used by local residents who also need a safe access. This area will be spoilt with excessive vehicular movements caused by the change of use, and it will cause a hazard to the existing users, as well as loss of enjoyment of the countryside available around them. Shotwell Mill Lane is a single track lane throughout its length, without room for vehicles to turn around. So if someone missed the turning into number 1, they're going to have a major problem. The managing director of Alderwood, the new owners, has already stated to a nearby resident that there would be at least 16 staff employed, plus multiple shift changes, as well as other visitors, including medical professionals and residents' parents. So in real terms, we're looking at a great many more vehicular movements than is alluded to in the officer's report. This report also seems to concentrate on the on-site parking requirements, and no mention has been made of the fact that Rushton Road is a very busy road, a rat run in fact, and is used as a main route to Corby and back from Rothwell, as well as to Rushton Primary School, which has quite a number of Rothwell school children attending. Access to Shotwell Mill Lane, as has already been said, is off a very, very sharp bend with very limited visibility, and it's an accident black spot locally. A car actually ended up in the garden of 101 Rushton Road only recently, having lost control on this part of the road, and this is the sort of thing we're dealing with. I'd also like to draw your attention to the planning officer's comment on the top of page 16 of the report, where it's stated that photographs show the new owner's workmen parking 4 vans and 2 cars. However, given that there's very likely going to be many more vehicles needing parking spaces plus a minibus, there will be inadequate provision. And the concern locally now is that vehicles will end up being parked on the lane, blocking it, or on Rushton Road, causing an even greater hazard than already exists. As my colleague, Councillor Sumpter, has already said, the property itself has already had the necessary works completed by the applicants before planning has even been approved, and they've been advertising for staff on social media, which really is quite presumptuous, I must say. Councillors, we do appreciate the need for accommodations such as this, not only in the borough of Kettering, but also in the county. But this is a totally unsuitable location for very many reasons. It's a great idea, it's in the wrong place. And I urge you to refuse the application before you this evening. Thank you very much for your time, councillors. Keep safe and well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Okay. Carol, did you want to come back on any of that before we...
Yeah, I can do. So both councillors have said about the works being completed and the jobs advertised. The works are mainly internal works because there's no external works being proposed. So the changes to the garage to a bedroom wouldn't need planning permission anyway. So anybody could do that to their own house. Jobs being advertised, unfortunately, we've got no control over that. That's obviously something that Alderwood decided that they wanted to do. But again, it's not a planning consideration. Going back to Councillor Sumpter, who'd be liable for repairs to the track. That's a private matter between the owners of the property and the owner of the track. So again, it's not something that we can actually get involved with. I would assume that solicitors have talked to each other about that. And then again about people visiting. So obviously we did in the update, there is information about the amount of staff that would be there. Now, this is from Linda Fish, who is the CEO of Alderwood, the lady who've been dealing with. And this was actually in response to the next door neighbour who had said all those things. Obviously, Councillor Brown has been, she's been party to that information as well. So yeah, there are going to be more than the amount of people there, but not all of the time. And people come and go. It's where it is an existing vehicular access. They're not going to be driving up the pedestrian footway because they are literally round the corner and then back out again. I take on board that you might miss it. But again, is that a planning matter? Are we going to refuse the application because somebody in a van might miss the turning? So, although, councillors should take on board what Councillor Sumpter and Councillor Brown have said, but they must also take into account that the proposal itself is what we're looking at, and there is no objection from the Highways Authority. There is a massive parking space on the land itself. If they want more than 8 parking spaces under permitted development, they can take that lawn up and they can pave the whole of the front garden, which would give them in excess of 20 spaces. So there would be enough room for everybody to park, should that's what they want to do. And just on one final note, if we can just go back to the photos, please. The one I've got up, bear with me 1 second. So photo number 2, that shows the 2 driveways and the relationship between the 2 houses. That's it. So to the left of the screen, you've got the 2 cars and you've got number 101 Rushton Road, and that sort of tower part of the house. There's front-facing windows and there's side-facing windows. Now, I've spoken to the lady who lives next door. Now, that window on the side on the ground floor and the window to the front is her dining room. So it's one room, so it's got 2 windows, and the same with the bedroom directly above. And then to the far left of the screen where you can see a bay window, that's the living room. The view that she is talking about is from those two side windows, which just clip over the driveway and then look beyond into the countryside to the east of the property. So as a secondary window, we're not overly concerned that any view would be blocked. And because the parking is beyond the driveway, nobody's going to be parking actually in the driveway, because then they're going to be blocking any access to people who are already there. So I'm not sure where, I think it was, and please forgive me if I've got the wrong councillor here, I think it was Councillor Sumpter had mentioned about the view, the loss of the view. Whether we're at cross purposes here about where this view is, but the lady that I spoke to, that was her view from that ground floor window that she was concerned about. And professionally, as a planning officer, I don't feel that there is a loss of view to that secondary window due to this proposal. So that's my comments on the two councillors' comments that we've had. Thank you, Chair.
If we can put the councillors, the speakers,
Yep.
in the waiting room, that'd be great.
Thank you very much, Councillors Brown and Sumpter.
Okay, councillors. So, Scott, you were first.
Thank you, Chair. I do have real issues in regarding the safety of the vehicles and pedestrians and other cars. It really is on a corner of a really tight road, which is already double parked on, most of the road going down that road. We're talking about 8 or 9 staff at any one time working there. So at change over time, we're possibly talking about 18 staff. Like what the speakers have said about deliveries and everything coming into that. I know you say that we can, or they can, they can change the front bit into a massive car park, which is really not in keeping with the area, having a concrete jungle in the middle of a very scenic area, creating up to 20 car park spaces, I think you said. I think that would be totally unacceptable to do that. And I just think that it's in the wrong location. It is absolutely needed. I understand that, but it is in the wrong location for that to happen. And I fear for the safety of other pedestrians, other car users, and the people living around that area. And just one point, it says here that it's to create a 4-bedroom young adult care home. Surely it's 5 bedrooms if you're creating a 5th bedroom for somebody else to stay overnight.
Thank you, Scott. Carol, did you want to come back quickly on any of those, or?
Just on the parking, so there's 8 or 9 staff during the day, because there's a one-to-one carer for each individual during the day, but not at night. So there's not going to be 16 and 16. There's going to be possibly 8 during the day, because there's 4 carers plus the management team. But then I believe there's only 2 carers at night. Let me just check. I think it's in the report. While I'm just checking that also, when I said about they could change the front garden, that would be permitted development. So it wouldn't need planning permission. They could do that now. Yes, I agree. Front gardens should remain as front gardens, but people have cars and they pave over them and they don't need planning permission. So again, I can't advise that that's a reason for refusal, because they can do that anyway. But let me just check on the staffing. I may have to. Bear with me. It's in here somewhere.
Right.
Okay, I've got it. So staffing ratio, it's within the section called proposed development. Staffing ratio would be 1-to-1 during the day, with 2 or 3 waking night staff. So there wouldn't be that massive turnover of staff at those 2 points, the pinch points of the staff changeover. It would be the 4 daytime staff and 2 or 3, depending on how many residents are in the house, changing over. So at that point, there would be 4, 6, maybe 7 cars. So I hope that's made that clear.
Right. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you.
Leslie.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I can understand where people are coming from the traffic, and I've got a few pointers. But my concern is for the living accommodation here, because Scott's already said we've got 5 bedrooms, not 4. Now, especially as I heard that they're going to do a long day, 7:30 in the morning till 9 at night. Where are the separate staff facilities for these people? Where is the office space? Where is the medication going to be kept? Paperwork, privacy. There's a communal kitchen. These workers, as well as the people living there, are going to have to be cooking. But I'm concerned with the number of bodies in the building at any one time. Now, we're talking about a 1-to-1 ratio, so therefore I would envisage that these people have got some challenging behaviours, which is why they need help. But I can't see where there's any space for them to have any quiet time, whether there's any time out space. And if you think that at some time there could be 13 people in there, this isn't, we shouldn't be looking at existing accommodation, it should be living accommodation. We're talking about the septic tank, and you compare the building for a family. I don't think that septic tank is likely to be serviceable for what could be up to 13 people on the property. That's without any helpers, any nursing. Policy 8 has been quoted, and I hadn't appreciated next doors where they got that bedroom. So policy 8 protects amenity by not resulting in an unacceptable impact on neighbouring properties by reason of noise and other pollution. Now, that turnover at 7:30 in the morning, again at night, outside that bedroom window, I think is going to affect their amenity. We're talking about 9 cars spaces. Well, of course, there won't be, because the minibus will take up 2. Those cars are going to be manoeuvred early in the morning and at night and at weekends. And if you've got number 1 parked in there and somebody else comes in, you're going to have an idling engine while they come out and the other one goes in. So I think that is a concern with that house next door with the noise. And I'm also concerned that there is not thought to be a need for a management presence. It's only going to be 9 till 5 on a Monday to Friday. So what about the weekends? And there's also, a lot has been made, and I can understand why, that this application is for the property and not the people who are going to go in it, which gives me a few more worries, because we're looking at this for this amount of people, but once it's passed, it doesn't have to be these people. They say in the appointment and in the report that the residents probably won't drive, but if that changes and Alderwood don't get it, we could have another extra 4 people there driving. And as I noticed that the adverts have already gone in, because once we give permission on this, on the property itself, then we don't have any control over how many people are going to be living there. So I think it's the amenity for the people who are going to, we want somewhere for them to live, not just exist. I don't think there's enough room for these people and the residents. And I think policy 8 is going to upset next door with the noise, especially at their bedrooms and the changeover times. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Carol, did you want to come back quickly?
Yeah, just quickly on the how many people are going to live there. There is a condition imposed to say that only up to 4 residents can live there. I think it's condition number 5. on the report. So we would have control over that.
Howard, where does that say that?
So in the recommendation on the report, condition number 5, no more than 4 residents, not including carers, should live at the property at any one time.
Right, so we don't know about carer and staff numbers, though. It is just 4 residents.
It's 4 residents. Alderwood have said what their carers are and their long hours. That's nothing that we've not said this is what you have to do. They've come back and said this is how we run our homes. This is how our staff are employed.
But once we pass this, that condition can be changed, and we can have as many people as they want in there.
Well, they would have to come back with a variation of condition application, and that would be a fresh application, and we would look at, is this condition still relevant? Well, yes, it would be, because at the end of the day, it's as Councillor Edwards points out, it is a 5-bedroom property. One of those bedrooms, a small one, is for a carer. So there's only 4 bedrooms for 4 residents.
But can I just say, if they weren't a 1-to-1 ratio, so people didn't have to sleep over, you could get 5 people in there without so many needs.
They would have to vary the condition. They wouldn't be able to put 5 people in there because they're then in breach of the condition, and therefore then they're in breach of the planning permission. So there is a control there to say only 4 residents at any one time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jan.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few concerns, really. It was more to do with the equality implications, because we have had something similar to this come up before in other areas. One of the reasons that it was not advanced was because it was not the needs of the people who might be residents there could not be addressed, because obviously we don't know who's going to move in there. But my concern is that you've got 4 residents moving in there. There's only 2 en suites. If you have a carer staying overnight, that means the carer and then the other 2 residents have then got to use the other bathroom. There's not an awful lot of space for people to be, to move around that property. And I think if you do look at the section 149 of the Equality Act 2010, the equality implications are going to be limited by the facilities they have or haven't got there. I don't think there's probably going to be enough toilet facilities, given these are people with extra needs, and we don't know what those extra needs are, nor should we. But those extra needs may impact on neighbours, and I think with respect to the people who have these extra needs, who are going to be residents there, I think we're putting them in jeopardy to be putting them in an area that has such a high volume of traffic and in that vicinity because of the location. I appreciate people need to live somewhere, but they need to be cared for in a humane way. And I think putting 4 people in there with their carers in that kind of space is just not enough. And I think what will happen is that if it does get passed, we'll then get another application to extend the property, because I don't think it's fit for purpose. I know it complies with living accommodation for people if it was a family, but living accommodation for people who have extra needs, I don't think is applicable. There's not the space to have time out. And I think really in contravening almost policy 8, because I don't think we are protecting the amenity for the people living there and their neighbours. And if you look at the management presence, if they're not going to be there, who's going to have the final say on what needs are required? What happens if one of those residents has complicated needs and therefore requires ambulance care? If you've got an ambulatory resident there, then that causes further questions to be raised. So I think really we need to look at section 149 of the Equality Act 2010 and to have a space that's actually conditioned, people can be nurtured and cared for properly in a safe environment. And I don't think that property has the space to do that at present. Thank you, Chair.
Ian?
Yeah, thank you very much indeed, Chair. I have the similar concerns of my colleagues in Rothwell, Councillor Brown and Councillor Sumter, and members on this panel. I live just about 3/4 of a mile away from this property. I know it extremely well. I know the area extremely well. When we're talking about NCC Highways have no objection, I mean, if they don't own the road, wouldn't have an objection, would they? Because, you know, if the road needs repairing, that's the responsibility of the owner, who I believe is the farmer further down the road in Shane. So what about damage to the way? You know, there's going to be a huge amount of more traffic than there's ever been before in and out of this property. It's not a substantial road, is the part going into Shotwell Mill Lane. So who pays for any serious damage? You know, does the farmer say it's got to be shared between the residents? So you've got the care home who would pay half, maybe, and local residents who've got no responsibility for what's going on in this property end up having to pay a big chunk of money to have their road repaired to get to their property. Certainly what Millway, which is next door. So I think there's a serious issue there. And when we talk about that road, Rushton Road, running up from the main road in Rothwell, is a fairly narrow country lane type road, I suppose you'd call it. There is constantly parking both sides of the road. You can only get one vehicle through it, and that runs right the way up to the bend on the corner. When you go around the bend going towards Rushton and Corby, it's a 40-mile-an-hour limit, probably 200 yards on the road, coming down to 30 miles an hour, and you can guarantee most people at bend are 40 miles an hour. Carl Sumter said there's been a few accidents there over years, and it's a very, very busy road. It's a rat run through Rothwell from areas outside of Rothwell to get to Corby, and in the morning and afternoon, I guarantee you that road is chock-a-block. It is an exceptionally busy road. Regards to job support, there are no alterations to the footprint. What happens in 2 or 3 years' time when they put an addition into a lease or put an extension on a property for another 4 bedrooms? You know, what's the situation going to be then? So I have concerns about that. I also have concerns the fact that in Rothwell we have a property called House, which is at the end of Harrington Road. It's been there a number of years. It was originally set up in a similar vein to what was being set up as. And we had problems with some of the residents causing mayhem in the area. We have a regular police presence there. These are people who come in from different areas, London and places like that, because they need one-to-one care. It's been a nightmare at the end of the. So I'm concerned that this could potentially turn into a similar problem. It's a big disturbance for local neighbours. It's a countrified area. Rothwell is a little country town. And I think the impact of the additional traffic, you know, as Carl Sumter said, vehicles being delivered, you know, cesspit tanks being emptied, that probably is a big lorry. That's going to churn a driveway up. And I think it's a real problem from that point of view. I fully accept, you know, the reason behind doing this, and you know, I compliment what they're trying to do because it's important. There are a lot of people out there who need one care, but again, I think it's just in the wrong place. I don't think it's substantial enough for the needs, as Councillor Thurland said. You know, there doesn't seem to be any sort of like big rest area, or you know, where other do the one-to-one consultations. I don't. I think it's a real problem. And just a point of interest, Shotwell Mill Lane is the only street or road country of that name, so it's a completely unique name and road. It's irrelevant to this, but I thought just as a point of interest, I'll let you know that. So. I think going for chair, I'm sorry, I can't support this application. I have serious concerns about it. The biggest concern is going to be the highways, the road and everything, the impact on that. So thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Clark next because he hasn't had to speak, but it sounds like you're wanting to refuse. So if you can start thinking of reasons for refusal if you're going to put a amendment forward. So Clark.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my concern, and if it's been mentioned before and I've missed it, I apologise. It's the septic tank. Now, it states in the application here that if it was a large family, it would have the capacity. But we're not talking about something that's a large family here. We're talking about something that's got 4 residents plus 4 staff plus 4 plus management and that sort of thing. And a septic tank in that sort of condition, I think that would add to other issues as well. I don't think the facilities there would be enough. And so, yeah, if that's been mentioned already and that's been dealt with, but I don't think the facilities that the building's got suit this sort of facility, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Is that all, Clark? I'll take that as yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Leslie, can we be quick and something new?
Is something I'd like Emma to comment on, if you wouldn't mind, Emma, because it says that, reading number 5, page 16, that this is a planning consideration. Well, I've looked on the list of planning considerations and I can't see that this is, but what I was going to say, and I did, Clark, I did bring up the septic tank issue as well, but it says the quality implications relate to the protected characteristics of vulnerable young adults and their ongoing residential needs that need to be appropriately accommodated. That is one reason that I'd like to put forward, that this isn't going to do that for these people. It's not big enough, and it certainly doesn't give them the right accommodation for the needs that they're going to have. And I just want to know whether it is a planning consideration.
Yeah, it can be a planning consideration. I think we just have to be a little bit careful that we're not the experts in assessing whether this is can accommodate 4 people.
Yeah.
And I think that we just have to be a little bit cautious of that we're not holding ourselves out as experts in how much space and accommodation would be required. Yeah. I think that there are obviously experts in that, and that includes people who are making that application, and they have all that information to hand and are the experts in it.
Yeah, it does. One of the points in there that they actually haven't applied for the Quality Care Commission for this place, so we don't know that they are capable of saying this is the right place because they haven't applied for it. But from a personal point of view and mother's point of view, whatever, looking at what and we have a house locally, and I go in there quite often with it, so I know what type of place people do need on a one-to-one, and these are really important facts for these children and young adults, whatever, at the prime time of their life where they need privacy. If you've got girls and boys, where are they going to go? I honestly do have real serious concerns about it. Thank you.
Okay. Cliff, is it something new?
I was just thinking about, you seem to have an awful lot of people there in the day looking after these people living there that clearly have needs, yet at night there's virtually nobody. And I don't think they really could have many at night because they haven't got the living facilities for people to live in. So it does worry me it's being half done. And then, if they need that much caring in the day, obviously it's on a busy road, they could start coming out at night or whatever and end up, across the road or whatever. So it does worry me because I don't know, just something doesn't feel right about it. It's almost a half-hearted attempt. But there you go.
Right.
Just a thought.
Okay. We'll take it. Emma's guidance as you just gave us on that. Linda, and then we'll have to wrap it up, I think.
Okay, thank you, Chair. It's comments really. I've listened with interest with what everybody says. I just think we need to be very careful if we are minded to refuse this, what sort of conditions, what we are actually going to put forward to refuse it, because a lot of the conversations that you've been a lot of the conversation that's happened, the debate tonight, is about, I've heard a lot, it's about presumption. It's sort of about presuming the type of people that are going to live there, etc., and their needs. And, you know, just a bit, because it is the sector that I work in, it is heavily regulated by its own bodies, by CQC, and things like there not being a registered manager on post. There's only one registered manager, not necessarily per each individual place of residence. But again, that's heavily regulated by CQC. So I think some of the things, I think we just need to be careful that some of the things we're sort of making presumptions rather than having the expert knowledge.
Thank you, Adam, Linda. So the recommendation is to approve. Here's a lot of people saying they're not happy. So do I have an amendment? Or
I'll put an amendment then, Mark, that I don't think it meets the Equality Act with the size of that building for what, because they're actually saying it needs a one-to-one. We're not saying that. We're saying it needs a one-to-one, and these are the amount of staff who are going to be in there, and I don't think it gives them quality of life. And also policy 8 with the next door neighbour with the noise onto their bedroom, I think the amenity to that next door neighbour.
so you're proposing, for, just so we're clear, for that it doesn't meet equality. Emma, yeah?
Yeah, I think, Councillor Thurland, I might recommend that we don't talk about the Quality Commission. I think you can talk about residential amenity, certainly for the neighbours and possibly for the people living there. But I think that in terms of the level of people that are going to be there, there's all detail that isn't really a planning consideration as such. And I think that we need to stick clearly to planning considerations and planning policies, please.
Sorry, I thought because we'd got it in there as a planning, because I thought that was it. But so we'll go to that the amenity for the people who are going to live there isn't enough.
So lack of amenities for the residents.
And the policy 8 for the noise and disturbance, when all those vehicles change over for the next door.
We have a second for that.
I'm quite happy to second it, Chair. I think you need to include impact on highway safety as well.
Okay, are you happy with that amendment as well, Leslie? Yeah.
Yes, Chair. And anything, if the officers can.
Well, it can't be just anything.
Well, no. But no. What I mean is something that's valid. Anybody that wants to put something valid.
Okay. So we've got the proposal for refusal based on amenity for the residents, noise for the neighbours, and traffic.
Yeah, Chair, I think the because there's no complaint or objection from the Highways Authority, I think your reason for refusal on grounds of highway safety would be relatively weak. But if members wish to put that on, it would be a planning consideration.
Is the highway mentioned, the private road? Because the Highway Authority wouldn't have any jurisdiction on the private road, would they?
Well, that's an issue, I think, for the the conversation and the issues around who's maintaining the road and everything else is a private, non-planning issue. If the highway,
but surely the impact on that road should have been discussed with the owner of that road.
Well, the highways are not saying that there's a highways issue in relation to the amount of traffic that's coming out of that access and that driveway. So all I'm saying is that would be relatively weak and would probably fall away if there were any planning appeal.
Okay, well, we could. Do you want to take that out then? If you don't,
I'd still like it included because I think it's a very valid point.
Okay, so we got those 3 reasons. So
yeah, I'll agree with that as well.
Okay. So, David, if you want to, oh no, it's Eden, isn't it? Doing the vote for me.
Thank you, Chair. So this is amendment to refusal. So Councillor Thurland.
Yeah, for the amendment.
Councillor Mitchell,
For the amendment.
Councillor Edwards,
For the amendment.
Councillor Jelly,
For the amendment.
Councillor Titcombe,
Abstain.
Councillor Adams, sorry, no noise came through there, Councillor.
Against.
Councillor Morton,
You're on mute, councillor.
For the amendment.
and Councillor O'Hara.
For the amendment, please.
That's 6 for the amendment, 1 abstention and 1 against.
So that application is refused. Okay. So on to item 5.3. Iveden Barnes. Oh no, Livden Barnes, Livden Terrace, Broughton.
There's no update on this item. Do you want me just to do the presentation, or are the speakers coming in?
Yeah, I've just brought the speaker in for this item. Councillor Bull, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
We've thank you for your patience. We brought you in at the start of the item, so the officer will present the report, and then it'll be your turn for your 3 minutes. Then I'll pop you back in the waiting room. The members will debate and come to a decision. So sit tight, and I'll tell you when to go.
Okay, thank you. I've just turned my video off just to help the signal.
Okay, over to you, Louise.
Thank you. So this application is a two-storey residential extension to a property in Broughton, Iveden Barn on Iveden Terrace.
Chair, we've got Cranford up on the screen.
My fault. 1 second. I can't get rid of it now. I'll try again.
No.
It's coming.
Thank you. So as I was saying, this is a proposal for a two-storey extension to property in Broughton. To facilitate that extension, there will be, or is proposed to be, a removal of a stone wall, which we'll come on to in a moment, and replacement of that with a timber boundary fence of 1.8 metres in height. So in front of you is a location plan. As you can see, the properties on Iveden Terrace. The two properties to note, which we'll come on to in terms of the photos, is Iveden House, which is adjacent to the site and the red line there, and number 70 High Street, which is just to the south there. So if we could have the next slide, please. The other point to note is the site is within the Broughton Conservation Area. And in terms of our duties, we obviously have to not only ensure the application accords with the development plan and all the different considerations within that, we have to bear in mind the provisions of the relevant acts to do with the conservation areas to ensure that we preserve or enhance those particular areas. So that's just something to bear in mind when you're considering the application. So in front of you, you've got another location plan, but also the existing elevations. The proposed extension will be to the southeast elevation, which is on the right of your screen. Have the next slide, please. And as you'll see on that elevation, that is where the two-storey extension will be located. And the best plan to look at really is the block plan, which is in the bottom right of your screen. And that shows the relationship between those two properties that I mentioned before. So Iveden House and number 70 High Street there. We could have the next slide, please. So these are the existing floor plans for the property. If we go on to the next slides, please. And you'll note on those plans the extension. It's a bit faint, but you'll notice the snug and the bedroom at first floor level, which provides that 2-story extension. Next slide, please. So in terms of the photos, I'll talk about those alongside some of the planning considerations. So in front of you on the right-hand side is the application site. And then the property to your left, the cream coloured frontage, is Ivy Dean House. And you'll note I mentioned those in terms of the location plan earlier. And this photo is taken from Ivy Dean Terrace. So the extension will be viewed between those two properties. So there will be a view, but it will be limited and screened to an extent by the boundary treatment and the gates along that frontage of that property. If we could go to the next slide, please. So this is a photo on your right-hand side. This is the application site, the host property, and the extension will basically go right in front of where we're looking, so where the shed currently is. And you'll note the property, Ivy Dean House, has no windows or openings on that side elevation. So in terms of residential impact, it will not have any impact on that property in terms of the relationship with the side elevation there. In terms of the windows to the front of the extension, we've had a look at that. We've taken into account, obviously, the positioning of the existing windows of the property, because the frontage of the application site already faces towards Ivy Dean House. So in terms of the additional impact, it's not considered to have any greater harm than the existing relationship that's there. If we could go to the next photo, please. This is a photo from the application site. So it's basically turned around. So you've got the application site now on your left, the host property, and Ivy Dean House on your right-hand side. And this is taken from basically the back edge of the application site and the wall that we'll have a look at in a moment. So obviously in terms of amenity, we've looked at that. In terms of design, officers consider that the design of the extension is proportionate, and albeit, as I said, there will be limited views, it will fit within that street scene and won't be harmful in terms of the conservation area. And obviously I mentioned before about being mindful of our duties in terms of preserving or enhancing the conservation area. If we could go to the next slide, please. So this is a photo from High Street. So number 70 High Street is directly in front of you. The path leads to that particular property. And then Ivy Dean House, which we've had a look at before, is on your right-hand side with that cream frontage. And then you'll
It's not me this time.
No, I think she's gone, Chair.
Okay.
area.
Oh, no, she's back.
Have the next slide, please.
Louise, you might want to go over that point again because you disappeared. You froze.
Like she has now.
I think she's frozen again, yeah.
There's not a lot I can do, unfortunately.
Oh, she's back. Louise?
Yep.
This slide that's showing at the moment, can you go over that again? Because you froze up, we didn't hear it.
Oh, no. Okay, sorry about that. So the photo in front of you is taken from High Street, and you've got number 70 High Street on directly in front of you. The path leads to that property, and on the right-hand side, you've got Ivy Dean House, that cream frontage property. And then between the two is the application site, which is visible through that gap. But I was just saying, in terms of the wall that we'll have a closer look at on the next photo, that's not visible within the public realm. Officers have considered the impact on the conservation area, which we've obviously got a duty to do in terms of the Act, but also in terms of development plan policy. And it's judged that the removal of that wall will not be harmful to the conservation area. If we could have the next, and I think final slide, please.
You still there, Louise?
Yeah, I'm still here. Did you hear that or not?
That is the final slide.
There should be another slide with the wall, a closer.
That's what we're looking at.
I haven't got that one up. I'll talk about it anyway. Even though I can't see it, I'll talk about it. So we've got the stone wall that you can see and I can't, is going to be removed to facilitate the extension. And as I was saying, that you've got the property Iverdene House on your right hand side, and then on the left hand side is number 70 High Street, and you'll note there is a window in the side of that property at number 70, but as the report says, that's a window to a non-habitable room. It's to a corridor that leads to an old coal shed at that particular property, so there's no impact in terms of amenity on that particular window or any rooms on that side. The wall, as I said, is being removed and being replaced by a timber fence. And I've already mentioned our considerations in terms of the conservation area. So in conclusion, we've recommended approval subject to conditions, and I'm happy to answer any questions when we get into the debate. And I hope you heard all of that.
I think we got there. Okay, Councillor Ball, if you want to,
Hi.
you've got 3 minutes.
Okay, so I'll try it with video. If the signal starts to go, I'll.
Sorry, Hilary, hang on a second.
We've also got Pat Scouse has now arrived in the waiting room. I'll let you have your go, Hilary, unless you wanted to switch for Pat. It's entirely up to you.
No, I'll take the 3 minutes, and then
I'll leave her where she is then.
Okay, off you go, Hilary.
Okay, so we've got 3 points to clarify with you this evening, and the first point is heritage. So Iverdene Barn sits within the conservation area as stated, and the conservation plan, within that document there's an historic map which demonstrates the enclosed plot of Iverdene House and Iverdene Barn. This plot was part of a wide small holding reaching up to Cox's Lane, which years ago functioned as a nursery. The conservation area plan states that one of the most striking visual characteristics of Broughton is the amount of ironstone that has been used in the village, and we'd like to draw your attention particularly to paragraph 17.6 of the conservation plan, which specifically states, a feature typical of Broughton, which results from its agricultural past, is small enclosures formed by farmhouses and their outbuildings located on some of the main streets. For example, these courtyards are in evidence along the High Street, Church Street and Gate Lane. Single-storey ironstone outbuildings or 2-metre high ironstone walls, in addition to the main dwelling, form these courtyards. Previously, there were a lot more in Broughton, as historic maps demonstrate, but as the village has lost its agricultural focus, several have been redeveloped for housing. Another part of the wall in question is visible from the High Street. The fact that the part of the wall in this application this evening is not as visible from the street, although it is visible when the gates are open in Iverdene Terrace, which is quite often, this should not detract from its heritage. Secondly, inconsistency. It appears inconsistent to apply strict design compliance, citing the conservation area and the neighbourhood plan for one element of the application, being the extension to the dwelling, and yet for the other element, the fence, allow the boundary stone wall, which is also a heritage feature, to be dismantled and replaced by a modern board fence. As we can't establish any reasonable justification why the wall should be dismantled, we question if the reason is to provide space for the extension of this scale to be built, or is the intention to use the stone from the wall for the extension itself. Thirdly, amenity and compliance. We consider that the dismantling of this stone wall properties, the application fails to comply with a neighbourhood plan policy 3A, which states that all new all new development will relate sensitively and with respect and consideration to the immediate surrounding area and will reflect the historic characteristics of the village. A wooden boarded fence does not relate in any shape or form to an historic ironstone wall. Broughton was historically a working village of several farms and many small holdings, as explained in the Conservation Area Plan, and boundary walls are a significant feature of this heritage. We felt it was important to have flagged this in our initial response to the application, and we respectfully request that the officers and the committee observe this point and relate it back to both the Conservation Area Plan and the Neighbourhood Plan Policy 3.
If you could, is that?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that, Hilary. I think David's going to put you back in the waiting room and you can watch the rest of the debate on YouTube. So, councillors, anyone want to make any comments? Leslie.
Ask a question, because looking at that, the pictures, there's an air brick in Ivy Dean House. Will the extension come so far that that is rendered unusable, or it's not going to make any difference? And has the next door neighbour, either side, complained? Because I can't see, according to the report, there's none. And is the man who lives in the bungalow, is he glad the wall's going? And he wants the fence. And if we keep the wall, can they still build the extension? Is that simple? Thank you.
Okay. Louise?
Those points. In terms of the extension, no, the wall has to go to build the extension that they've asked for, because it's not flush to the application site. It does jut in, so it does need to be removed to facilitate what is being asked for tonight, which is why it's part of the application before you. In terms of objections, we received no objections from any neighbours, and I've also just clarified with the officer there's been no sort of informal contact or no phone calls or anything sort of raising concerns or anything like that. So I can't.
So what about the air brick, Louise, when it comes across the air, how far does the extension come? I know it's going to be a building regs thing, but
yeah, I haven't got the figure to hand to tell you exactly what the gap will be, but obviously, as you say, it's not a planning issue.
Yeah.
They would need to adhere to building regs, and also anything to do with the party wall, like in terms of if they were obviously taking the wall down because that's attached to the property, there's other regulations they would need to abide by. But obviously, as you say, there's building regs, and it's not something that we could we have any control with in terms of planning. But there's been no other objections or any concerns. It's purely the issue around the wall.
So the wall has got to come down to put the extension, but there'll be enough space there to put a wooden fence.
Yes, as proposed, yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Cliff.
Let's have a look. When I look at this, we have neighbourhood plans, we have a conservation area, we have the heritage of the village. And, at what point do we stop? At what point do we actually say, I'm sorry, that is where the house is. That is the wall that's there. It is, an iron stone wall. It's up to the householder to build round it. I can't see him having to make complete major works to move around it. I almost agree, because there comes a point where you have to respect what you have. If it was a listed building, you say, well, sorry, you can't do that. End of, but, oh, well, it's just a wall. Well, unfortunately, that just a wall, it's been in that village for years and years. It's one of the, getting less and less the amount of things that actually recognises the village. And I don't think we can just say, well, it's only a wall, they're going to put a fence there. So I can't really support that, because, people who have properties with those, something that's historic, heritage, need to actually be what would I say, sympathetic to what's already there and make their design either move around it, move it. You know, if you can still have a fence there and you've got a wall, I can't believe they're losing that much of the actual property. I don't believe a fence compared to the thickness of the wall. And when you look at looking at the plan, that is an awful long drive going the other way. So if you move the wall, the house, 8 inches further that way, you would still have the wall there and the house behind it. So I just think we're all just saying, well, it's only a wall. It isn't just only a wall. It's part of that village. It's part of the heritage. It's in the neighbourhood plan. It's in a conservation area. You know, at what point do we stop? So I can't really support it for that reason.
Okay, thank you, Cliff. Ian.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think Cliff's just said what I was thinking. You know, I agree with Hillary. You know, ironstone walls and everything's been there for a long time. You know, going to be taken down for an additional development to the house. And we'll bung up a wooden fence. You know, not in keeping with the area or the character of the area. You know, is there some way that we could? I don't know if we could put a condition on, say, change the fence to a wall. If you're knocking it down, reuse the bricks, clean them up, and rebuild wall in character. I don't know. It's I don't have a problem with the building extension itself. I think it's very nice, looks good, but I do have a problem, like Cliff said, with the fact that, you know, they're getting rid of this ironstone wall that's been there I don't know how many years, but you know, and they're going to bung a wooden fence up in its place. So I'm not very happy about that. I'll support the application, but I would like to see fence replaced with an ironstone brick wall.
Well, I'm sure the planners will tell me, but the application is in front of us is for the extension and to change the wall. We can't approve one bit and reject another, so it's all or nothing.
Okay.
I've got no other speakers. So the recommendation is to approve. Do I have a proposer and a seconder?
Chair, are we proposing not to let it go if that wall's got to come down then?
Well, at the moment, I've got the proposal is to approve the application. I'm just asking if there's anyone who wants to.
Chair, I think I'd like to propose that we reject the application because of the demolition of the wall.
And I'll second it.
Okay. What planning grounds?
Not in keeping with the area. Loss of heritage. Yeah.
It's in the conservation plan, the neighbourhood plan.
Yeah.
Louise, I'm looking at Louise and Emma and James. Is that acceptable or?
Well, it's obviously your view as members that you're taking into on that grounds. The only thing I would say is obviously in terms of, yes, it's in the conservation area, but we have to take into account obviously visibility of different features within the conservation area and their value. And we've obviously done that within the report. And we've obviously talked about listed buildings, and they do have a different threshold in terms of looking at their significance and the loss of those and alterations to those and the harm that is caused. So, you know, obviously you've got your view on that, but I just obviously want to make that point before you take a decision to refuse it on impact on.
Chair, I think it was a very good report, Louise, but I think from what everybody's saying, we do have to look at what we've got, what we've had, our heritage, and that is the reason for it.
So we've got proposal to reject on the grounds of the heritage, conservation area and the neighbourhood plan, did I hear?
Yeah.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that?
I'll second.
So Cliff Morton to second. Okay, Eden, if you could do a vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a vote on the recommendation for refusal. Councillor Thurland.
For the amendment.
Councillor Mitchell.
Abstain.
Councillor Edwards.
For the amendment.
Councillor Jelly.
Amendment.
Councillor Titcombe. Councillor Adams. Sorry, Councillor, no noise came through again then.
Against?
Councillor Morton
For the amendment.
and Councillor O'Hara.
For the amendment, please.
Okay, so
That's 6-4, Chair.
okay, so that application is therefore refused. Okay, so we will go back to 5.1. Is there an update on this one?
No, there's no update, Chair, on this
Okay.
item. So I'll just carry on if that's okay.
Yeah, you carry on.
So we're now in Cranford, another residential extension, this time to a property on Battle Close. So it's for a single-storey rear extension, which is to replace an existing conservatory on the back of the property. There will also be an erection of a store to the rear and adjacent to the new extension. And there will be some alterations to the rear, to the first floor dormers. And we'll have a look at some photos that show the existing dormers there. And that's to change that to a box dormer. And there will also be a Juliet balcony arrangement to fully glazed windows within that full box dormer. And there's also some replacement of tile cladding to the front on the front floor, first floor dormers there. Have you got the presentation up on your screens?
Yes, we have, Louise.
Yes, Louise, yes.
I haven't got it up, so I'll stop my video to see if that helps my connection. No, I'll try and take you through it without having the presentation in front of me.
I'll tell you which one we're on, Louise. We're on the site plan at the moment.
Okay, just have to bear with me. Okay. So as I say, we've got a number of different extension and the various alterations to the property. So if we could go to the next slide, which should be a location plan and block plan.
Yep.
And you'll note the relationship between, see, the application site and number 2, Battle Close. And as detailed in the report, there has been an objection and some comments submitted by that property. The main concern is loss of privacy from the full glazed windows that are to be put in at the back of the box dormer. If we could go to the next slide, please.
To the floor plan.
Floor plan. Okay, so you'll note at the ground floor that we've got a conservatory on the back. That's to be removed, and that will then be replaced by the single-storey rear extension. So if we move on to the next slide.
Upper floor plan, first floor.
And then if we move to the next one, which should be a set of elevations, I hope.
It is.
Yep. So we've got the existing elevations which are up there, and as you can see on the elevation that should be on the top left of your screen, you'll see the conservatory on the back that will be removed. And then the elevation on the top right is the rear elevation, and you'll note the 2 dormers in the roof, and those will be replaced. If we could go to the next slide, please.
Proposed ground floor plan.
Okay, so we've got the single-storey rear extension at the back there, which will replace that existing conservatory. And also, as I mentioned before, a store, which will be adjacent to the extension and number 2 Battle Close. So there's that store in between the extension and the adjacent neighbour. We could go on to the next slide, please.
Proposed first floor plan.
Okay, so this is showing, see that first floor. Originally, the application did include a balcony at first floor level. So you would step out from those fully glazed windows onto that balcony area. We've we had concerns as officers regarding that in terms of loss of privacy to the adjacent neighbours. So that has now been removed from the scheme, and there will be Juliet balconies fitted on the outside of those two windows. So you won't be able to step out onto that first floor area. If we could go on to the next slide, please.
Proposed elevations.
Okay, so you'll note the extensions at the back, and then on the right hand side, top right, is where we've got the change to the rear dormers, and those that new box dormer and the Juliet balcony, not balcony, sorry, to clarify that, no balcony but Juliet window arrangement on that elevation. If we could go to the next slide, please, which hopefully should be a couple of photos now.
Yeah, first photo to the conservatory at the rear.
Yep, so obviously I've explained about the conservatory going and then being replaced by those extensions at the back, and then the two dormers there that will be changed. And then the adjacent property is adjoining at number 2. And then the next slide will be the front elevation of that property. And there's some minor alterations in terms of the dormers there and the tile cladding to those. In terms of overall impact, obviously we've looked at residential amenity, and now that balcony has been removed from the scheme. Officers are content to support the scheme and don't consider there's any additional harm in terms of the relationship with the adjacent property or any other surrounding properties. And in terms of design, it's considered to be appropriate, and the extensions are proportionate in terms of the plot. And so it's recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. So we have a written submission from the applicant, Ruth Webster, which I'll now read out. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to address you. I've read the committee report and wish to make the below comments specifically in relation to the letter of objection. The glazed upper part of the extension faces away from our adjoining property. There are no glazed areas that overlook or are capable of overlooking the neighbouring property, so we would dispute that there would be any loss of privacy. In essence, the proposed glazing merely replaces the existing, albeit moved about 1 metre further forward. With regards to the observation that much of the work is to be undertaken in an extremely confined space, the vast majority of the work will be undertaken at the rear of the property, whilst I would accept that the neighbouring property's rear garden is an extremely confined space. This is not the case for our rear garden, which is considerably larger. And finally, with regards to the issue of noise, dirt and dust, it has to be accepted that any construction work, inevitably such issues will arise. We will endeavour to keep this to a minimum. And finally, with regards to the location of skips and builders' vehicles, I will ensure that at no time will they be placed on land owned by our neighbouring properties or cause an obstruction. And that's the end of the submission. So, councillors, Scott.
Thank you, Chair. And you've just pretty much answered what I was going to ask, actually, because I just wanted to talk about what those neighbours have objected on. And I'm really pleased to see that the applicant is working with the neighbours, so to kind of put their mind at ease. Can we just put that as a note on the application that they do adhere to that?
Well, can we do that, Louise?
Wouldn't normally apply a note in terms of obviously neighbour discussions. I've never known that to happen. I'm happy if anyone else has had that note applied to a planning permission.
Do we not put restrictions on, like times and days and things? Could that not form part of it?
If there was something specific you wanted.
So I think Councillor Edwards is asking if we can put restrictions in terms of when building work will happen, so start and end times and not weekends, sort of thing.
Would that not be part of the construction management part of it, Louise?
There's a condition number 6 on recommended list of conditions, which talks about works audible. So obviously if they wanted to do internal works, painting or things that didn't obviously generate any noise, they could get on with that. But if it was any kind of construction that caused noise, then they couldn't do those outside of those particular hours.
Yeah.
If there was any, and those are sort of standard hours that we apply to most sort of construction sites.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't, obviously it's for you to consider, but I wouldn't recommend changing any of those particular hours. It's whether that covers what you would like it to.
Are you happy with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just, you know, the neighbours had put that objection in, and I just thought it was something that we could look at doing just to, you know, to help them out. So yeah, no, that's fine. I'm happy with that.
Okay, thank you. Leslie.
Louise, on one of the pictures, it showed where that new store's going to be. The bathroom window goes into the store. Is that right? I presume they'll have to change any ventilation.
Sorry, Leslie, there was a gap between the store and the window. It was a standalone built structure.
Yeah. Oh, what, the store is different. Oh, right, so it doesn't all go into one. And when we're going to have the Juliet type windows, and you said you can't, it's still going to have a flat roof, and it says you can't step out over onto the flat roof. What is there to stop them having a sash window so you can actually step out?
But they would have the arrangement where you have the bars across. Obviously, they would need to adhere to the plans that you would approve. So there would be an approved plans list attached to any planning permission.
And they couldn't come back for permitted development rights and take those out, so you've got just sash windows.
They could, no, because they were applying for this arrangement with these approved plans.
They'd have to come back with another planning application if they wanted to.
Yeah, and there's some safeguarding conditions around, obviously, those the Juliet balcony arrangement to ensure that obviously they don't take those down and then try and use that as a balcony. And if they did, obviously there would be an enforcement issue.
So the neighbour would know and they could complain and come back to us.
Then look out potentially, depending on what they were doing, any harm. Obviously, we're looking at an issue which we don't know is going to happen, but you could.
No, but obviously one of the objections is they're going to step out, which I would understand. They're stepping out onto that flat roof, looking straight over into next door's garden. So the privacy.
There are controls in place, and obviously if there was harm there, you could take action.
And that's fine. Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Jan.
Thanks, Chair. Question following on from that, Louise. If when this extension is built, are the footings in it substantial enough to put another level on if in the future, and if so, would that mean that they could just build it because they could do it within reserve rights?
No, they wouldn't be able to, because obviously if they were, I don't know about the question about whether the footings, because obviously that's not a planning issue that we would look at in terms of whether you could build above. So that's something that I can't answer for you. In terms of building above, in terms of permitted development rights, obviously if they were building straight above, it would be within a certain amount of the boundary, so they couldn't go above a certain height. So they would need to apply for that if they went over that. So they would need to come back with a new application to do that.
Ian.
Yeah, just a quick one, going back to what Jan was just saying. I think under normal situations, when you put your patients for an extension, they would be suitable to it. Surely would be controlled by the development of his property. So.
Sorry, Ian, you'll have to repeat that. We lost you.
Oh, I say it's normally we put foundations in that are suitable to put a 2-story extension on, for example, and it would be controlled by building control, etc., wouldn't it, during the process of doing it?
Okay, thank you, Ian.
Sorry, Chair, can I come back on that though? Because when they put their footings in, as long as it's not lower than the building regs requirements, they can put in the footings they want, can't they?
Yeah,
Yeah, so they could do it.
I
enough
think
to
building
take one
regs
up.
are that they have to be, a single story has to be capable of taking a story above, but that's
Yeah.
not part of this application.
No, but we don't want to be misled that we're covering next door's concerns by that, because that's not the case. Thank you,
Okay.
Chair.
I've got no more speakers, so the recommendation is to approve. Do I have a proposer and a seconder?
Happy to propose, Chair.
Scott and Ian Jelly to second. So Eden, if you want to do the vote for me.
Thank you, Chair. So on the recommendation to approve, Councillor Thurland,
Yes, 4.
Councillor Mitchell,
4,
Councillor Edwards,
4,
Councillor Jelly, Councillor Titcombe, Councillor Adams,
4.
Councillor Morton,
4.
and Councillor O'Hara.
4, please.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. So that application is approved. Before we go on to the last one, we've got, 17 minutes left. Are you happy for us to finish this one off if it runs past 8 o'clock?
Yes.
Thumbs up. Okay. So the last application is KET 2020-0858 to Kirko Close, Morsley. Sorry if I pronounced it wrong.
There is an update on this particular item, so I'll read that out. There's a letter received subsequent to the publication of the committee agenda papers from the neighbouring occupier at number 4, Cuckhow Close, requesting it to be made clear to members that the issue they have raised in relation to the proposal are comments and not objections. So within the report, it is stated that that particular property has objected to the scheme, and that is not the case. The neighbour has made clear that they were comments only and not an objection. Thank you.
Can you see it, Louise, the
I can't see
presentation?
it, so this is going well.
We'll do what we did before.
I'm going to stop my video and see if that helps any. Must be the connection. Okay, I've still not got it up, but yeah, if you can.
So we're on the street plan.
Okay, thank you. So we're in Morsley, and this is various alterations to this particular property. There is a single story front extension proposed, conversion of part of the garage to habitable accommodation, and a loft conversion which has dormer windows and roof lights to the front elevation. So if we could, I'll just point out.
Plans and elevations.
Okay, I'll just mention in terms of the location plan, the area to the front, there's quite a large area before you get to the road, and that's sort of an amenity public land area with footpaths running through it. So just to note that that's between that and the road and the properties across the road. Bear with me. So you've got the existing plans up on the PowerPoint, David?
Yep.
Okay, so you'll note from that that you've got the existing garage there, and that will be partially converted, as I just mentioned, and then to the front of that, so between that and you'll see there's a pathway, that will be the location of the proposed extension, single story front extension, and number 4 is on the left hand side of that particular plan. So if we could move to the next slide, please.
That's existing front, rear and side elevations.
Okay, so you'll note on the existing elevations, so hopefully on the top left of your screen, you'll see on the left-hand side, that's the back of the garage. So in terms of the front elevation, you currently see the back of that garage. It's a plain blank elevation. and then the garage faces the other way into the rear. If we could move to the next slide, please.
That's the proposed block plan.
Okay, if we move to the next slide, because
Proposed plans and elevations.
okay,
3
brilliant.
pictures there.
Yep. So from this, you'll note you've got that partial conversion of the garage, which is on the left-hand side of the property, and to the front of that single-story extension with a bay window to match sort of existing elements of the property. And you'll just make out adjacent to that number 4, and you'll note from that that single-story front extension doesn't project any further forward of that property. The bay window projects slightly forward, but that runs in line with a projection further along on number 4, and we'll see those on the photos in a moment. If we could go to the next slide, please.
Yep. So I've got proposed front elevation, side elevation, rear elevation, and another side elevation.
Okay, brilliant. So on the top left, you'll have the front elevation, which shows it's in the left-hand side the proposed garage, proposed front single-story extension with that new bay window to match the existing host property. And then there is, as I mentioned, a loft conversion as well as part of the scheme. And there are 3 roof lights on that front elevation and a new dormer window within there. In terms of the rear, the garage conversion will mean that they change one of the garage doors into a window in the rear there. So there's some minor changes there. And if we go to the next slide, which hopefully we're on to the photos.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So the first photo is the application site, and you'll note that it's a dual frontage property. So you've got those frontages onto the main road, but also going around the corner there. And on the left-hand side is that garage, where in front of that is where the extension will be going, and adjacent is a blank elevation to number 4. So there's no impact in terms of amenity on that particular property. And hopefully, actually a later photo might be better actually to explain that relationship. So if we could go to the next photo, please.
So side view of the property.
Okay, so from this, you'll see the side of the application site, but importantly on the left-hand side, you'll see that blank elevation of number 4. So the new extension won't project any further forward than that neighbouring property, but there is a pitched sort of projection on that neighbouring property, and the new bay window to the extension won't project any further forward than that. If we have the next slide, please, which will probably make that even clearer in terms of that relationship. So we've got, hopefully, you've got the application site on your right-hand side with that blank elevation of the existing garage, and then adjacent to that number 4.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, and if we then go to what should be the final slide.
That's a distance shot right across the road.
Yeah, and this is just to give you a bit of context in terms of the site. We have received an objection from a property across the road, and one of their concerns is potential sort of looking into windows. So I just put this shot in just to give you that bit of context that the application site isn't directly onto the road. There is quite a wide space of amenity land there. And I'll leave it there, I think, other than to say that it's recommended for approval with conditions. Thank you.
Okay, councillors, I've got no one asking to make any comments. So do I have a proposer the proposal is to approve. Do I have a proposer? Ian, seconder, Jan? So Eden, if you want to go to the vote.
Okay, Chair. So for approval, Councillor Thurland.
For.
Councillor Mitchell.
For.
Councillor Edwards.
For.
Councillor Jelly.
For.
Councillor Titcombe.
For.
Councillor Adams.
For.
Councillor Morton.
For.
And Councillor O'Hara.
Or please.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Excellent. So that application is approved, and that concludes the evening's business. Can I just thank everybody for putting up with the internet issues we've had tonight? We seem to have had quite a few gremlins tonight, but thank you for all attending.